It wasn't me wanting to be like, hey, I want to be a speaker. My goal for 2020 is to be a speaker. It was, no, I just want to be a part of this mission in combating human trafficking. And then from there, I enjoyed it. And then I realized, hey, I can talk about other things.
And I always tell people, like, there's two different types of influencers. There is consumer influencer, and then there's like the professional influencer. And companies like, maybe it depends on the company, but if you're talking about like an instrument company, they're not going to be interested in a hygienist who maybe has a huge following, but her base is, or his or her base, or their base is consumer, because the consumers aren't buying instruments, right? You need a professional account where your audience is professionals. You need to invest in yourself. I didn't just become a speaker. I'm actually a Texas certified teacher. I can teach public school. I am a teacher, I'm an educator.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, an Endeavor Business Media production. This is episode number 361, and I am your host, Andrew Johnston. Thank you so much for being with us today. It is December, and we are starting off the month with a roundtable discussion featuring Amber, Anchi, Erica, and myself. This episode we recorded at ADA SmileCon. This was back in October in Houston, and so you are going to hear a little bit of background noise, and generally, no one really cares about that, but that's why it's so loud. It was an amazing event. And the topic of the discussion, I feel, is a little bit timeless. I feel like I often get asked about how to get into speaking. And I myself, I'm not really a real speaker. I mean, I've done some speaking, but I don't do the lecture circuit. I don't do webinars or anything like that. But I do have access to people who do those types of things and have recently gotten started. And so I feel like sometimes it's nice to hear, as opposed to like the legacy speakers who have been doing it for 30 years, sometimes it's nice to hear what the new people are doing. So the point of this episode was to give you all, especially students, new grads, or someone that's just kind of trying to shake up their career a little bit, a behind the scenes peek into what Amber and Anchi did to get started and where it has taken them so far. They're still very much in the beginning part of their journey, but I think that they've done a lot of really great things and they've done it right. But if you also have feedback for them, or if you have questions for them, I know that they would love to hear back from you. So make sure you're reaching out to them. And then next week, we have a special treat. We are bringing on fellow podcasters, which, again, I understand that this is not everyone's cup of tea for podcasters to be on a podcast, but I really like these two. We have Elvis and Barbara going to come in, and I have a special guest co-host, Teresa Duncan, who you all know, and we're talking about dental labs. Yeah, let me say that again. We're talking about dental labs, everyone. So it's interesting because I don't think we've ever had that as a topic on the show, but they give great advice and also just kind of insight into their world. I think the more that we understand someone else's job, the better we're able to do our own job, the better we're able to communicate, right? And I've said that multiple times, and I feel like that's so true. And so that's why I wanted to bring them onto the show. You're absolutely going to walk away learning something new. But there's also a surprise discussion kind of at the end of the show that's very specific for dental hygienists. And you're not going to want to miss it, especially if you're feeling a little bit burnt out or you're looking for something else in your career. And then lastly, for me, it's been a bit since I've begged and begged, but please, if you guys will just click on your little podcast app, go into where you can leave a rating and a review for the show. I would very, very, very much appreciate it. It's been a little while since we've had a review. And I think that this is selfish, but I want people to know that, hey, this is still a cool and relevant show. Well, I mean, it's a very relevant show. I don't know how cool this is, but I want people to know that we're still active. We're still doing things. And so if you can leave something that's written, that would help other people know that this is something they should be listening to as well. So that's it for me for this week. Thank you again so much for listening, and enjoy this episode with Anchi, Amber, and Erica.
A tale of two hygienists.
Hey friends, quick pause in the show to remind you about the CE offered for several of our episodes. All you have to do is click into the show notes and follow the link to the CE Zoom website. Answer a few of those questions about the episode correctly, and you'll be rewarded the appropriate amount of CEUs. This wouldn't be possible without a partnership with our friends at TempStars. TempStars is more than just a temp and a placement service. They are clinician-led and education-focused and strive to perfectly match individuals and dental offices. Learn more about tempstars.com or go back and listen to some of their tip episodes. They are absolutely worth the listen. And now, back to the show. You know, I want to know, honestly, though, both of you are relatively new on like the speaking circuit.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk about that.
Okay.
Not like, I don't know. I don't want this to be like a
Bashing.
No, you can be bashing all you want. That part I don't care about. It's more of
Hygienists.
How does someone really get into it? Because I feel like we've tried to cover this before and people give so generic of answers that it's not really helpful for anybody.
Yeah.
So how did you start?
I started off
sorry, hold on.
Truth.
Which one of you started first speaking?
Oh,
I did.
Okay. That's kind of how I felt like it came about.
Yeah.
But it's only because not everyone's on my radar. So sorry, I wasn't trying to like minimize.
No,
Oh,
I
no,
think that's
She's like, no, I'm a big deal. You don't know.
I think that's been the journey, right? Like, I started speaking, and we're best friends. I mean, she can tell the story, but basically, I was looking for like a co-speaker for my human trafficking, and she's like, me. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like my best friend and like somebody who I already worked with, like on some like business stuff. So,
and had you already expressed interest in speaking before this, and she just was oblivious to it? Okay.
No, it wasn't like I wanted to be a part of that topic to be a speaker, but I wanted to be a part of the topic just to bring more awareness and be part of.
We can talk about like the human trafficking, kind of like what we did.
Yeah.
But
it just evolved.
Yeah.
It really.
Then we started our study club, and then.
Okay, don't gloss over this. What year did you start speaking?
I started speaking 2018. I hated it. And I started, I think maybe like backtrack. I was a horrible public speaker. And like in hygiene school, I was class president, and I like had a really hard time talking to my class.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then I started teaching high school. And so then every day I was forced to be in front of students who are brutal.
Yeah.
Who will like call you out. And so for like every day for like 2-3 years, I was speaking in front of people. And so that helped a little bit. Then I started teaching hygiene school, and it's a little bit more professional. And they know a little bit more. So it makes it hard, like easier for them to call you out on things.
Yeah.
So I started speaking for them, and then I was working at a university. And so part of our like rubric for us to like meet the check boxes so we can meet our goals for the year was like do speaking. And so my local hygiene component, I was serving, I think I was vice president at the time. Somebody had canceled, and so I was like, I guess I could speak on something, you know. It wasn't paid. I practiced so much. It was okay. It wasn't bad. I had an interesting experience with a like big time speaker who emailed me. Who she probably, if she hears this, she'll know it's her.
I'll just go ahead and say her name. It's fine. Nobody listens to the show anyway. It's fine.
But I don't know what it was about her and me that we had like I don't know, our moments. So she emailed me the night before and was like, hey, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, great. Like that's not something I'm trying to do. I just want to. I'm just a little person just trying to talk about this one topic that nobody has like any interest in. It was like teledentistry, which I did have an interest in. And she like was sitting in the back as I'm speaking, and she's like writing things down. I'm like, oh man, like I'm teaching her something. No, I was not teaching her. She like walks up to me at the end and was basically like, these are the things that you could do to improve.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't read them. I just didn't I barely had like the guts to get in front of my colleagues and talk about something, and I was just gonna be proud of myself for doing that. I ended up speaking 3 more times that year, and then I decided I didn't like it. I was like, nope, I don't like this. This is so much anxiety, so much work. I was really lucky that I had like sponsorship pretty early on because my topic was so like niche.
Yeah.
So I worked with Mouthwash for a little bit there, and then I'm still friends with. I don't speak as much on teledentistry anymore, though. It's just I've kind of evolved in like what I speak on.
I want to circle back to the sponsorship thing in a minute, but I do want to admit that I have done that to somebody before as well, and I feel I feel like garbage because I came from obviously from a place of like, hey, I want to help you. It wasn't like, here's a whole big old page of notes.
We weren't friends like that though.
Well, so I didn't know these people, and they came and they started talking to me, hey, we have this podcast. And I'm like, okay, here's some things you guys do to improve your podcast. And it was not welcome advice.
That sounds like Andrew.
And it was, well, it's just because, audio quality is really, really important. Like
100%.
if you're going to make it, I guess here's the thing. So as for hygiene, there was a couple other little hygiene podcasts that were not like really podcasts at the time, is like radio shows and stuff like that were before us. So we didn't like create this market of podcasting for hygiene, but we were pretty early adopters, and there was lots of really good, like these guys over here, like good dental podcasts before us, right? But it was still such a small little community that I'm like, if you guys are going to get into this community, like at least do it right.
Yeah.
Like don't ruin it for the rest of us who are going to probably end up monetizing.
Yeah.
And then now we're competing. Now people are going to listen to your crap and think that that's what a podcast is. I mean, that's not.
Oh, that's how I feel about social media.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's a different topic. And that person who like did that to me maybe didn't like had bad intentions, and we've like talked since then. We're not necessarily friends, but there's like no like bad blood either. I don't know. Maybe that's just like maybe she was trying to be helpful. But in that moment, my first time speaking, it was not what I needed for me to progress.
It was inappropriate. Like it's be by all accounts, no matter what, it's always inappropriate to do that to somebody.
But yeah, so I gave up speaking for a while. I think I didn't speak for like a year after that.
Because of that experience, or just like
the whole thing.
You're like, this isn't for me.
I mean, yeah, it was. And I was speaking on teledentistry in Texas, and Texas, super conservative state, where we are today. But I did remain, I think, like the teledentistry expert in Texas. So dentists were like super respectful of me and my knowledge and like what I thought. So I did some programs at the university I was teaching at, and then COVID hit. And then everybody wanted to talk about teledentistry.
Yeah.
And so then I got invited all over, like doing virtual things. I was like, okay, this is kind of easier to do like virtual talks. And then I started working with Quest Oral B, who I love. And they started allowing me and inviting me to do other talks on other things that aren't necessarily like teledentistry, like talking about things like, and now that's what I say. I speak on things related to me and my life. So I speak on public health dentistry because that's what I do. I speak on Latinidad because I'm a Latina, very proud and vocal Latina. And I talk about abuse because I am a survivor of abuse. And then that's kind of how Anchi and I got together. So I started telling my abuse story when I was teaching at the university at the hygiene school. And initially it was just, about my friend. And then I started telling them a little bit about my story, not like as in depth. Now, if you take our human trafficking course, you'll learn a lot about me and my experience. But then I decided like I would do like an abuse course to just hygiene professionals, and that went well. And then in the state of Texas, they passed a law requiring a human trafficking certification for you to renew your license for initial licensure and renewal, but you had to get it approved by the state of Texas. And it was a lot of work. I'm sure. And it was something I was like, I can't like tackle this on my own. And so I started like looking for people who could potentially do that with me. And that's when she kind of like came in.
That's when I was like, hey, I'll do this with you. So human trafficking, the church I attended in the past and the church I attend now, one of their main focuses and main missions is to combat human trafficking. And it was something that always tugged at my heart to be a part of, but they had different ways you could volunteer, van tours, being actually out there in the streets, interceding. But I didn't feel like that was where I fit or that was where I needed to be. So when this really came about and we needed this requirement, it really was just a natural progression to be like, okay, me as a dental hygienist, this is where I can come in and be a part of the mission in combating human trafficking by education, So I was glad, so it was a perfect marriage because Amber was in talks with someone to help her, but I was like, hey, I have time. It's 2020. I need you guys to break up and then we're going to get together.
It was perfect,
It was also 2020, so I'm like, hey, I have all the time in the world. I only had one kid at that time, so I'm like, hey, I can do stuff, And so it was great. We got that presentation together, and so that's really how it started. So it wasn't me wanting to be like, hey, I want to be a speaker. My goal for 2020 is to be a speaker. It was, no, I just want to be a part of this mission in combating human trafficking. And then from there, I enjoyed it. And then I realized, hey, I can talk about other things. So one of my main platforms, I guess, is about pediatric dentistry, specifically about like behavior guidance and making it a comfortable and positive visit for a child. And so I have a lot of like colleagues or like past classmates. They would email me, DM me, whatever, and ask me, hey, I have a patient, they were crying, what could I do? Just asking for advice. And so, I would tell them what I would do. And so I was like, there might be other people out there, because I know a lot of people, especially when it comes to kids, they're more reluctant they're like, oh, I have a kid on my schedule, and the whole day shy, So I want to like provide relief for the clinician and, make it a positive experience for the child too. So I just went from there and started speaking about pediatric dentistry and helping kids and the clinicians themselves. And then I talk about Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So one of my hygienists I work with, her son has Duchenne. And so I've been treating him for many, many years, and his friends as well. And so that was something I studied in hygiene school when I got my master's. And then so it just seemed right to be able to talk about it on, a different platform and educating dental hygienists. Because not a lot of people know what Duchenne muscular dystrophy is or anything about it. So that's one of my topics as well.
It's got to be nice having like a friend that's smarter than you, huh?
It is. Well,
This is. I'm just kidding.
Look, but for real. I think the reason that we work like really well together is because I'm very much a like storyteller. So when we do our abuse lecture, I tell my stories of like working with survivors of human trafficking and providing like dental care to them and resources and my experience with abuse. And just like I bring that, and she brings all the data, all the things that I hate talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, perfect. I don't have to.
I mean, as an audience member, that's what you want. You want the science. You want the the relatable experiences and all of that. So let me ask this. Because both of you are speaking about things that mean things to you, right? They speak to your heart. If, we're thinking about these students or maybe these new grads are like, look, I want to share stuff too, but maybe they don't actually know what their topic is. Maybe they don't have anything that they feel compelled to do. Like, how do they find something to speak on?
I mean, I think for a new grad, I think they could talk about things related to like them and their life, what they know, their lived experiences. Like students during COVID, I don't know anything about that, right? Like taking those new exams that they've changed, I don't know anything about that. Like hygiene school experiences, things that happened to me like way long ago. Like who am I to speak on those topics? Yeah, those are things that they are like related to them and their life. That's what I say.
That's a great idea for a podcast, by the way. Like, hey, if you're listening and you went to school during COVID, reach out to me, Andrew@LTHN.com.
I have a friend.
I want to talk to you, and Amber's going to help me co-host that one.
I have somebody.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As a hygienist, when you find the topic that you want to reach out to people and you want to become a speaker, you want to do something outside of your hygiene chair, how do you talk back to that inner critic that's telling you that's for other people, that's not for you?
Oh, yeah. I call that like my minority mentality. I have my motto. One of them is Me Vale, and there's a song by this rock band in Spanish called Maná, and it just goes, Me vale, 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 me vale todo, which means like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about anything. I don't care about what like Amber's negative things in her mind are saying. I don't care that everybody else doesn't think that Amber can't do it. I didn't win a single hygiene award in hygiene school. Nobody thought like, oh, Amber's going to go out and do great things. But I was like, I think Amber can go out and do great things. Like I do a lot of self-talk. I do a lot of meditation. I think about like, why am I doing this? Is it like selfishly for me, or is it for something else? And for me, it's my parents. It's the sacrifices that they made to come to this country, everything that they had to go through in order to support me, for me to be able to be a professional. My parents didn't even graduate high school, For me, I try to think about like the impact that I'm making in like the Latin community, in survivors of abuse, and helping other people do outreach work the way that I've done it, which is not necessarily traditional. I'm hoping that helps reach other people. So I try to think about it not so much as me being selfish and trying to be like, oh, hey, look at me, but the impact that your stories could make.
Yeah. And with that, we talk about there's like room for everybody, even though it's like the same topic, we all come about it from a different perspective. So I had another hygienist approach me, and she's like, I want to talk about pediatric dentistry too, because her careers have been in pedo. She's like, but I know you're talking about it. And I said, no, like we come from different perspectives. We have different experiences. And there's so many different topics, even within pediatric dentistry, that let's be here. Let's be here to educate, and create positive experiences for kids and clinicians alike. So I think that's the thing. There's room for everybody. We all have a different perspective. We've all had different lived experiences. Let's get that information out there.
And I will say, like, as being the only one speaking on Latinidad and working with some big companies who I absolutely love, sometimes I have companies who will come to me that are competitors with my companies who I cannot work with, right? Who would still give me a big platform to share about things that are important to me, like Latinidad. And there's nobody I can recommend who I can be like, this person's also speaking on this. You could have them too, because it's a message we want to be shared. So I personally would like more people speaking on Latinidad, more people having like social media platforms that are Latino, Hispanic kind of pages, because when like RDH Magazine reached out and was like, hey, do you know any RCCs? Like anybody who's an influencer who could be an RCC? I'm like, where are the other Latinos? So do the things, and we want to support you. And I agree, like, I don't believe in competition. I don't think that anybody can tell my story, and I don't think that I can tell your story. And so I just don't ever feel like there is competition, personally.
I would agree. I think there's plenty of room in the sandbox, right? That's what we always say. Plenty of room in the sandbox for everybody. I guess my only thought about that, though, is you have to take the craft seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Don't come in and give a bad name for pediatric topics.
Oh, well, let me tell you, like, one of my biggest pet peeves.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So as a survivor of abuse, somebody who's, like, worked with people, human trafficking survivors, people who go out and talk about human trafficking without doing their research, or abuse without doing their research, like, infuriates me. When people put out, like, and I already know, I don't even have to take your lecture to know that you didn't do your research, because I see your flyer and you have somebody who's chained up. Most people who are abused are not chained, are not shackled. A lot of it's psychological. And so you put out these images of people and you say, this is what abuse looks like. And I see it as somebody who is going through abuse, and I don't look like that. Or a provider is seeing that. It's like, oh, they're not tied up, they must not being abused. And so you're hurting, like, our people. You're hurting, like, it just makes me so mad.
Yeah.
So if you're going to talk on that topic, or any topic, like, know your stuff.
Thank you. Exclamation point. Boom. Okay, let's talk about sponsorship. And if you don't want to talk about it, I'm not going to make you guys talk about it, except for I am going to make you talk about it. So starting out, the question that always gets asked that nobody will ever answer is, how much should I expect to get paid?
Okay, so I think it depends. When I started off speaking, and I had like zero mentorship. So, and honestly, I think that I am a speaker now who is severely underpaid. Like, I don't think that I even now, like, I'm getting what I probably should be getting, because I don't necessarily know. But when I first started, I was getting $300 for like an hour and a half. But it was mostly like local lectures. And at that time, that was also what ADHA was paying. Like, when you applied to speak at ADHA at that time, and that's kind of how I gauged it. I was like, oh, okay, so ADHA paid for like, and ADHA is a different topic, but we can go more into that. But they paid for your flight, one-night hotel, and $250.
You're talking about the National Association conference.
Yes, not the local.
Right.
And then I had I worked for a university where they paid, and then we were like polishing instructors, and their set thing was like $300 per day. And so I was like, oh, maybe $300 is like what's like reasonable? I don't know. Now I'm probably making, all these years in, I would say for a 1 hour virtual, probably like $1,000.
Which is
an hour
low.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is low. Yeah. Especially because I am like a national speaker.
Yeah.
But it kind of, it's hard. So I always say there's one is getting a gig. The other thing, completely different, is getting paid for that gig, right? And so also having to consider like what one gig is. So if you're getting a gig, like, are they willing to pay you? A lot of organizations, especially smaller ones, they don't want to pay you. They only want to depend on sponsorship. And that's hard for my sponsors, right? And so then if you're an organization, I think, and we have a very, very small study club, and we still pay our speakers, okay? We have a, should we say it? I don't know. But I mean,
say it.
Okay, so our sponsorship total for like our study club is $700. There's $100 of like that goes to like admin fees, paying for C certificates, all that stuff. And then we divide the rest $600 evenly between me, her, and the speaker. And if they want to have a sponsor on, they can have a sponsor. We give them the entire list of attendees. But I think like even us at our itty-bitty amount of money, if we can provide you some sponsorship, then these big orgs can too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, nah, don't, like, no.
Yeah.
If we can do it, and we are very transparent with the people who we bring on, and we tell them like, this is how much we make, and if we grow and we make more money, then we will continue to do the same thing equally, because we're all equally putting in work. If we had more money, we'd give more money.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think if we little ones can do it, then the big ones can too.
100%. So because you guys are friends, did you take your cues of like what you're asking for from her, or did you do your own research on it?
No, I mean, it's so hard to do research, right? You don't know.
No one answers.
No,
it.
nobody answers.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
what we're going to talk about
vague.
today. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about answers. Yeah.
So Amber, has really been like my mentor throughout this whole process, and asking her and getting her advice and going from there. When I had my first sponsorship, I did come to her and was like, hey, what's a reasonable amount? And I was just starting. She's like, $250. I think it was $250 for an hour and a half. Like, let's start there. And it was virtual. So Amber's been my mentor from that. I think we've grown a circle of speaker friends as well, where we're being more transparent about it. So that way we can sort of set a standard and know that we're not selling ourselves short by any means. And so just growing from there. It's still a learning process.
I'll tell you a story. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So shout out to like Stephanie Potts and
Yes.
Carrie Carter-Shirelles, who are like my two other speaker friends and who I can like really go to, because they're, at the same level that I am, doing the things that I am. So I can get like more information from them, and they've been awesome with me. But also I will say, don't just come at somebody and be like, hey, how much do you make?
Right.
Like you have, it's a friendship thing. You gotta, contribute to the friendship, and I will contribute to the friendship, but you can't just be like taking from me. At that point, I'm coaching you and mentoring you. Then you need to pay people. But there was one time where Carrie, I won't say the name of the organization, but there was an organization that came to her and they're like, hey, will you do a 6-series webinar for like $100 or something dumb, something ridiculous. And she didn't tell me the name of the org, but then that same organization reached out to me and offered me like 7 times the amount for one virtual CE.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
And so I was like, hey, so I don't know if the org is listening. Oh, well. I was like, hey, is this the organization? Because it was I could kind of tell them maybe.
Conveniently the same.
Yeah,
okay.
I was able to figure out like, hey, is this the person, like who these people were the ones who reached out to you? And it was different people from the same organization, so I don't know, I think. But it was the same organization. And I was like,
that's some shady stuff.
It is shady.
Yes.
And so that's like what happens, right? Like if we don't like share and talk and then, like, if I don't know how much to charge and I'm charging less because I just simply don't know, then that does hurt other speakers.
I mean, that's Hygiene 101, right? Like the new grads are charging less and taking the jobs of the veterans and all these.
And so,
save a
like,
buck,
that's obviously, like, not what I want. I think it's just harder to have, like, people don't want to share those things with you. And I can understand some of that, too. But I think if you're an organization, you need to have, like, part of my problem is you need to have some skin in the game, because then, like, here, if you don't care, if you're just having a free speaker because you have a sponsor, you don't care that much to like promote the event. And the way that like my sponsor is getting their payment is the people who are attending, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't like invest in recruiting people, nobody attends, then what does my sponsor get? They don't get anything.
Yeah.
And then that hurts my relationship with that sponsor, and then my job.
Yeah.
And I want to do good for them. I have really good people that I work with. Like, yeah, I would say like Cloud Dentistry, Crestor will be, they're probably like my biggest sponsors, right? NSK, I mean, they're probably some of my biggest, and they've been absolutely amazing to me. Like, I want to do good by them because they do good by me, and it makes it really difficult when not everybody's in it to work. I think they just want like free stuff. I don't know.
So do you both speak for the same sponsors?
No.
How did you find your sponsors versus also how did you find your sponsors?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of my first sponsors, we met as part of Dental Hygiene Spark, our business that we have together, along with someone else. And so we started there meeting with them to do stuff on that platform, on Dental Hygiene Spark's platform. And then so when I branched out, I reached out to them, individually to ask if they would sponsor one of my first speaking gigs. So that's how I got my first sponsor. And then from there, it's just been relationships. So I did a webinar for Young Dental earlier this year. And then they really just, Amanda Hill, just really opened up the door and it's like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And so I've been able to I didn't mean to use that. I've been able to connect with her and be able to build a relationship with her, and branching out to do, other things, social media, and now, they're sponsoring some of my courses in November. Some of it has been relationships that I've met through Amber, like Cloud Dentistry. They've been amazing as well. I get to speak on their platform as well as they're sponsoring me individually. So it's been a mix and match, but definitely it's a lot of relationship building and connections, and also wanting to work with companies with products that you believe in and that you use as well.
Absolutely.
It's not just, I'm trying to find someone to pay me. It's about partnering, like really partnering, putting your name behind them and their name behind you, and being in this process together.
Yeah. So how I got my first sponsor was Mouthwash, and it was at ADHA trade show. And I just went up to them and I'm like, hey, I speak on teledentistry. Want to be friends?
Do you guys want to,
Yeah.
And they were so great to me. Yeah, they were a great company. I had a really, really good experience, like starting off with Mouthwash. And then, like, now I don't really speak on teledentistry much anymore. So, we don't work together as much anymore. But they were really great to me. They were like, they were my friends. We would go out to dinner. Sometimes they would pay me in food, and I was like, yes, please pay me in food. Yeah, they were really, really great. Crest and OB, was not on purpose. I was going out doing the things that I'm already doing. I was an educator, was vocal as I always am, but I was very much well known in Texas for doing community outreach work. I won the ADA Crest Oral B award for scholarship for dental hygienists seeking academic careers, sponsored by Crest and Oral B. And so then Desi, who doesn't work for P&G anymore, I guess he must have seen something in me, but he was like, hey, you should write for dentalcare.com. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then I got asked to attend this like KOL, and I was like, what the heck is KOL? But they're like, innovation something in Atlanta, and I was like, oh, this must be for like all the educators, so I ignored it. Yeah.
Of course.
And then I saw Andrea and Desi at a trade show, and they're like, hey, did you get our email? Are you going to come? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to.
Totally
yeah,
got
I absolutely
the email.
responded to that.
This.
Yeah. And then COVID happened, and so then it became virtual, and I was seeing like all these names. You were probably on there. It was for like the Oral BIO like thing, like when they're first like launched. And so I was like, A Tale of Two Hygienists, Andrew Johnston, Irene. I was like, whoa, I'm in the wrong like virtual room here. That's not the one I belong in. I had like 0 social media following at that time, and that's how kind of we started our social media together, because I was like, I probably should be on these things. Yeah, and I got super, super, I think, lucky. And then they had like a series of like interviews with me. So Andrea already knew me, Desi already knew me, but then I started meeting with like Dr. Kaplan, I met with Dr. Gans, and then they started giving me more and more opportunities. Andrea Johnson, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for P&G, for Crest and OB, for Andrea. They've been amazing to me. People are like, oh, you like blue is your favorite color. I was like, no, man, blue is the P&G color, and they are my favorite. So I agree. It's like a lot of relationship building. I go to a lot of trade shows. I go and I talk to, and I try to be strategic about who I talk to, specifically companies that I like. And I think that's the other reason I don't get paid as much, is because I don't stack sponsors on top of sponsors. There are other sponsors that I work with, like I love SDF, so like I use Elevate, right? I love Ivoclar because I like their Proxet. So, but I also don't want my presentations to be products. So a lot of times I just end up using like one sponsor, 2 sponsors, and so then I'm making less maybe than other speakers. But then I feel better about like what I am doing. But when I do go to trade shows, I go and I talk to people and I tell them like who I am. Now I'm super fortunate that a lot of companies like know who I am, and will come to me. Will go to my lectures. So going to these national places and trying to speak there, getting on podcasts, like writing for magazines.
Sounds like the best idea you've ever had is getting on podcasts.
Writing for magazines. I mean, you have to market yourself and what you do, and people will start to get to know you. I've also been super fortunate to get a lot of awards. So at like RDH and Roof this year, my face was everywhere. It was embarrassing.
How did you like that?
It was embarrassing.
You're like, why is my stupid face right there?
Like, again?
Staring right at me.
God. Like, I was like, yes, I know. I know. She nominated me recently for the America's Tooth Fairy Award, and there goes my face again. Like, which I'm like super grateful. Like, thank you. Like, I appreciate like all those things. And I think that those things have also helped me. Now it's getting to be a little embarrassing, so please don't nominate me for any more things. But I think that also it wasn't a strategy. It just kind of turned out to be one that I did get. I didn't even know I was nominated for the Dimensions 6 Dental Hygienists that you want to know, and I got that, and I think that was also like helpful. The award of distinction, obviously helpful. So I think those things also help. Posting on social media, getting a social media presence. I've gotten some gigs from social media. Now some companies want to work with me specifically or others specifically because they have a social media presence. I do think that I like that I am somebody outside of social media, and if social media went away, I still would have my career.
Yeah.
But I also think that it helps because it kind of, it makes the deal.
Let's talk about that for a minute, though, because like we've done social media for a really long time. I've seen people come and go, and I want to be. I guess this is more of a message for the audience. It's just I want to be very clear that just because you have a social media presence, if there's no real content there, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. I really don't care.
Yeah.
If you're not actually giving real stuff, then you're just still gonna be nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you're still in nothing at that point. Like I can't say that enough. It's just like you can't build off the backs of other people and steal memes from people and
no.
No. You have to do your own work.
So, and I always tell people like there's two different types of influencers. There is consumer influencer, and then there's like the professional influencer. And companies like, I mean, it depends on the company, but if you're talking about like an instrument company, they're not going to be interested in a hygienist who maybe has a huge following, but her base is, or his or her base, or their base is consumer. Because the consumers aren't buying instruments, right? You need a professional account where your audience is professionals, and I think it's harder to build a audience with professionals because we're harder to impress.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be like, I hated initially being on social media, and then I started focusing and I'm like, okay, so like what can I do that is educational, because I think I still consider myself an educator. I was like, okay, I can teach people about like my community, about dental Spanish, or how to organize community outreach work. And sometimes there might be some motivational thing in there. And I'll say my dental Spanish videos don't always get the most engagement, but I always get followers because people find like, oh, this is useful. I can learn something
They
from
find
this.
value in it.
Yeah. And I think that the companies appreciate that. And I think also, even though I have a smaller social media following, I have been able to get like social media paid deals because of the relationships I have outside of social media.
Sure.
Because there are companies who I already know and work with and love. Yeah.
Well, using it as an adjunct.
Exactly.
How did you start? How do you start?
In Instagram?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So I had a hard time. Everything is like slow process for me. It might not seem that way. It is slow. I couldn't even post I could create something, but I couldn't click the button post. That scared me, like the idea of people like seeing me. And so Anchi and I and our friend Shawna, we were like in a group chat. And like one night after that KOL IO thing, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something, but I cannot do it. I can't just go out there pretending like I know something and post it on social media. And so the three of us partnered together. I was like, okay, I can create content. Y'all can post it. And then it's not me. Then I disconnected from like the idea that it was me. And then throughout like the year, I got more and more comfortable with like posting and storying. I would have to ask them before I would post a single story. I'd be like, is this okay? And then they'd be like, yes. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to post it. I can't do this. But now, like, obviously, like, I run my own Instagram, and not to, like, I love Dental Hygiene Spark, but I've now surpassed the platform that we've had. And that made me, like, really proud to, like, I did something on my own. Not because I don't love Dental Hygiene Spark. I do, obviously. Like, I wouldn't be, like, the Latina RDH on Instagram if it wasn't for Dental Hygiene Spark. But I needed that. Like, I needed my friends to hold my hand through that for me to be able to, like, do it on my own eventually. But they say that you should think of
Clapping for you over here.
Yeah.
Like, think of a niche, like what you want your page to be. Not always, because I'll say, like, mine is just related to a lot of, like, me and my life, but a lot of it is really also the dental Spanish stuff. So thinking about, like, what you want it to be, looking up, making your handle something that would describe, like, who you are and, like, what your page is about. I try to include, like, RDH and dental hygienist on both those bolded ones. So your name and then that first bolded line, which is your name. Those are the two things that are searchable. So I was talking to Bethany Montoya, the human RDH, And I called her out because I was like, you're not searchable on Instagram. Like, I know that
Giving her that advice that was unsolicited.
Yeah,
Good job.
yeah, I did. In front of people.
In front of a crowd.
In front of a crowd. I think she appreciated it. She's like, wait, what? I'm like, because her name on Instagram was a human RDH, and her tag was also, like, her username was also the human RDH. And so on her descriptor, she had Bethany Montoya, but that non-bolded section is not searchable. And so if I searched Bethany Montoya, she wouldn't come up. And so if other people who knew her were trying to search her up and didn't know her by the human RDH, they wouldn't find her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like knowing those little things, I try to do a lot of research. Reels is a really good way to grow your page. Instagram wants to be like TikTok, so they're going to try and push those out. Looking at trending audio, so audio with the little flechita, the little arrow at the bottom of the audio. If you want to be like flechita, it's like a
Okay, no, that's fine.
a flecha. I was trying to think of the English word, man. I had to go Spanish before.
No, I like
English.
it. It's like our audience is learning something. Okay.
If you want to be like super on trend, go to TikTok first and see what they're doing,
Yeah.
and then bring that over to Instagram. Like, yeah, I think there needs to be like some benefit. People need to be knowing something, whether it is that you're bringing entertainment or education or talking about pediatrics, right? Whatever it is that you need to people need to know. Now I love it. Now I feel like, I don't know.
I still hate it.
I
hate social media with a deep passion.
But
Brittany would be like, hey, can we post this picture of you? I'm like, nope. Oh, that picture
I
that you're
posted
talking
you
about
today.
earlier? You what?
I storied about you today
Why?
because we're doing this.
But I wasn't on it. It was just your face talking about something.
No. It was me with these headphones, and then like I turned around and it was like on Chi, and then it was you. And then I tagged it to two hygienists.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So that picture, though, you're talking about. So we had a different picture for that, but it was from RDH Under One Roof, and like there's a reflect. Like we were sitting next to a mirror, and there's like the side of my face was like reflected in the stupid mirror. I'm like, no, like I don't want this one. Like change. Like I don't even want to be in it. She's like, you have to be in it. And I'm like, do I? We have logos for that, right? Put a logo over me. Like that's fine.
That's
and
right.
then. Anyways, that's why you're so big in that picture.
Yeah, I'm like right up front, and he's in the back, and there's this little tiny Andrew, and there's me with my big hair right in the front.
Just because like that's how we were sitting when the picture was taken. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
I was like, it's the Erica show.
Social media is the worst.
That's our friend from that's Shawna.
Hey, Shawna.
Well, how often do you put something out? Every day?
I should post that. I mean, if you want to grow, you should probably post something out every day. I don't. It takes a lot out of me, like mentally, and like Stephanie Postures.
Because it's
Stephanie
creative
Bots.
stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Like Stephanie Bots, who is Stephanie Posture Pros on Instagram, who does your tipisodes, I think.
Yeah.
She. We were talking about this yesterday. It is like a persona that you put out. So it does like take energy out of us to like be this person on social media. Not that that's not who I am, but that's not who I am all the time.
Right.
You know, and so it takes a lot of energy. For my dental Spanish videos, I do a lot of research on like the words that I'm using, like not just like my Mexican Spanish, but what are other like forms of dialects of Spanish that I could include in this. Make sure that I'm saying things like properly, not just like with my slang. Then it's like captioning everything. Like you should caption all your stuff to be inclusive, but also to help people learn. And Instagram doesn't understand Spanish, so I can't like do the auto-generated captions. It's a lot of work. And then a lot of times I put in like pronunciation into my videos. It takes me like 3 hours to do from like record to edit a video, which is a lot of work. It's a lot of time. So I
much time.
don't do it every single day, which is why I don't think I've grown as much as I could have. But I'm proud of like what I've grown. I will say, don't buy bots to follow you. Don't buy bots to like your stuff, because we can tell. We can tell. No, but we can tell if you have bought your likes or bought your followers. We can tell. I mean, companies might not be able to tell, but we can tell.
Well, there used to be like a website that you could go to, and like you could see like from what country all of your followers are from. It's behind a paywall now.
Dang it.
But I mean, I learned about this years ago, and so like you go to like our A Tale to Hygienists Facebook account, and it'd be like 98%, United States.
Yeah.
1.3% Canada or whatever, and then like the UK.
Yeah,
Like,
We
you
can
know
do
what I
it
mean?
on our individually, but you can't see it on somebody else's.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you used to be able to check
See,
everybody else out.
That would be legit.
It's behind a paywall now. I can't
Yeah.
remember the website. And it was only for Facebook at the time because Instagram wasn't there
Yeah.
yet. This is years ago, actually.
So I would say, so like for a company, if companies are listening, my advice to you, if you're looking for an influencer, is yes, you want to know what their following count is, right? So you want to know their reach, but you also want to know what their engagement is. Like, if they have 16,000 followers and they only have 9 likes, that's not good engagement. Okay, so you need,
Thank you for saying
they say
that.
like a good percentage, which is a hard percentage to get, would be 10%. And that I would say I have 4,000 followers. I don't get 400 likes on, on my things. I get like 200, 300. I'm like, yes. Like if I'm at 200, I'm feeling really good about myself. So, if I get a few comments, I'm feeling good. But if you can tell if somebody has like bought their followers, if you look at their follower accounts and like none of them say hygiene, they're all like, 400 accounts. If they have like all these likes, but no comments, you should have if you have a huge following, you should have at least a comment.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the accounts that like it too. So again, there you can see the transparency. Are they hygienists or dental professionals related or not?
Yeah. But look at their engagement. Are they getting, because it doesn't matter if they have a huge following, if they have no engagement. I'll say that the mistake that we made, I think, with Dental Hygiene Spark was we did a lot of giveaways initially. And so people were following us for the giveaways. They weren't interested in us in our stories. So when we would post out content, then there wasn't much engagement. You have to
a little bait and switch. Like you brought them in one way, and then that's not what you wanted them for, but that's not what they came.
So and sure, it helped grow our numbers, but it didn't. And it was not like with ill intent, but I was like, oh, like this is not what we want. We want to have, you want to build relationships with people. You want organic growth, which is harder. Sometimes we'll do a giveaway, like I'll do a giveaway, but I try that's not like the majority of my content, because you do want to have that engagement. That is important.
Yeah.
And even choosing giveaway items, you want to choose it that dental professionals will use, not just anyone that will like it, and then and you don't want to hashtag giveaway too.
Right?
No cash. Or
Which we
it's
do,
a
by the
gift
way.
card for a dental site.
What's the other hashtags they should not use? You say don't use hashtag giveaway. What's the other hashtag not to use that we don't use because we get hate?
Oh, hashtag fluoride.
Oh,
yeah.
All that anti-fluoride.
Yes,
people
they come
for
out.
it.
Oh, yes. That's the other side of Instagram you see when you do hashtag fluoride.
We had to turn off comments on one of our podcasts because of that. It was Matt Crispine. This was years ago. And he was talking about fluoride. And then, we got all of these comments on that episode in our thing. I'm like, all right, let's just delete all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've filtered my comments now, so you can only comment on my stuff if you follow me.
Nice.
And so I can tell, because sometimes people will message me like, hey, I tried commenting on your thing, and I was like, oh, it's because you don't follow me. You gotta follow. I appreciate the comment, but you should follow me. Yeah. So I get hate when I post about 3 things. If I post about anything LGBTQ+, I get hate. If I post about fluoride, I get hate. Or if I post about Latinx, I get hate. So it's interesting. So now I just don't hashtag fluoride. Because I don't,
crazy.
It's so crazy. So I filtered my comments, and then they started coming into my DMs, telling me that I'm killing people, and I'm like, this is too much, man. I was just talking about water fluoridation and community projects. My gosh, yeah.
Can I ask a bit? I don't think it's that personal of a question, but your dynamic. You said earlier with Dental Hygiene Spark, you guys were a group. You guys did this thing, and then you kind of surpassed it. How did you guys as a group not have that jealousy or that you're breaking up the band kind of situation?
Oh, I think we did.
Should we not ask that question?
No. I'll say we are best friends. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
We are, the 3 of us are best friends. I love the 3 of them. We love each other, and they are Shawna, my number 1 hype woman. She is always there to tell me that she tells me that I'm a whale. Because I used to say I'm just like a little fish. She's like, no, you're a whale. And she'll send me these emojis of just whales. She is my number 1 hype woman. But I will say it was hard for a while, working, we hadn't worked together, right? And so it was sometimes hard, feeling maybe somebody wasn't contributing as much, or maybe we were too harsh on criticizing one of Shawna's content, or we all had very different visions for what we wanted. I thought this is work, this is a job. My teammates necessarily think that it was a job. They're like, oh, it's kind of for funsies, and type A here is oh, that's not going to work, right? And ultimately, it was a me problem. It wasn't an Angela Shawna problem. It was an Amber problem. and I talked to like my husband and my therapist. I was like, why am I getting upset over a stupid social media page when I have like these amazing friends, right? Like I'm getting upset that we're not like producing as much as I want us to. And am I really going to lose my friends over social media? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like it was definitely like an Amber problem. And I had to like check myself, and I told them, I was like, hey, I need like some time, and I like don't want to talk to like anybody. And poor them, because they're like, oh my God, I was like cutting me off. But I needed to like set myself straight. And I was going through a lot of things like with like my family and like personally and at work. And it was 100% I was like in the wrong. And then I decided like, I can't force people to do the things like to be what I want to be, right? Like, so I was like, I need to then create my own thing. Yeah. So
yeah, we just had different goals, and I think when we started it, we had the same goal. But as when we went on, things changed, especially going back to work. The time you had on your hands changed too. So our vision for Dental Hygiene Spark, each of us changed, and so we had that conversation, and we just evolved in different ways as well. So I think Dental Hygiene Spark was definitely a learning process for all of us.
Yeah.
And definitely still something that's there and we value. And I still, want to, I still want to, have hope to like push content out of it. I just don't,
she does.
I don't have,
And
I try, but I don't have time. And that's a totally another conversation I've exhausted
but now
with
it's
my
like
friends.
a thing that we did together that I think like helped the three of us learn. And now there is no jealousy.
Yeah, so we have that, and we have our own identities, you know? And I think that's okay, too, and I think that's how we evolved. I've seen other podcasters, so there's, it's outside of the dental community, but it's called Asian Boss Girl. They had their podcast together for years, and then now each of them have their own interest and branched out on their own, but they still come back to this one thing. And I think that's just how you evolve. If we just stayed as Dental Hygiene Spark, I think that would be a real fault and disservice for each of us. And I think that's actually the intent of Dental Hygiene Spark, to spark what we wanted to do and spark how we wanted to grow. And so we've achieved that by going out and doing our own thing.
And so I started wanting to like post about Latinidad. And, as a group, it was kind of decided like, well, that doesn't really align with Dental Hygiene Spark, which is true. Like in Dental Hygiene Spark, we're just posting about like general like clinical things or like community outreach. It wasn't about Latinidad. And so, although it hurt me, it made me realize, well, then I need to start like my own like page on focusing on that, because it's a very completely different audience.
Right.
And so I'm good. I'm happy with that. Like we're very good with it, being able to have like honest conversations with each other. Sometimes conversations that like hurt, but ultimately we're still really, really good friends.
Talk
and
every
I love
day.
them. We talk every day. We were at a party last night at SmileCon. And then people came coming up to us, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish people wouldn't. Like, I just want to like hang out with my two friends.
I'm
it's
so
just
famous. I just feel like oh my
not like
gosh.
that. Oh my gosh. Not like that. But it was just kind of like, oh man, we don't get to see each other that often anymore.
Yeah.
Just because we live in the same city. But if you've ever been to Houston, Shawna and I live on the same street, an hour away from each other. And then she lives like 50 minutes from me. So like, it's like impossible to like get to each other. So no, but it's so like shout out to like freaking Hygiene Edge, who's been able to make
bring them up.
Work.
But here's the thing though, like, and you pointed this out already, but just to revisit, like they have the same voice, right? Like they have the same mission, they have whatever. You both have like different passions, and I don't know Shawna, but I'm sure she has a different passion as well. And you can't get an audience that's segmented into three different and try and make them come together because the content is so varied. Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, Hygiene Edge is like the gold standard, though.
They are.
They're pretty amazing.
They're so aesthetic. So, oh man, they're perfect. They're perfect.
I'm surprised they're not bigger than they are, though.
Same. Honestly,
I think they have a big YouTube following as well. Yeah, I love meeting them in person because their personalities are so different. But yeah, once you get to their page and like you said, their voice, it's just one voice, one mission.
But even like when you meet them in person, they almost feel like one.
Yeah.
I don't know. They do. They feel like.
We're going to edit this part out because they're all like white Mormon from Utah.
No, that's not. No, I feel like their energy is very much the same.
No, Malia's like quiet,
that's true.
reserved,
That's true.
and then
Jessica
Jessica's
is
like you. And then it's just like,
know. But they're all so nice.
Well,
They are.
Mormon. I mean, yeah.
Is that what it is? I
Really
don't know.
sweet.
They're just, they're so nice.
They're very wholesome and good.
Yes, they're very wholesome.
Yeah.
The three of them.
Like they should be like on a 50s sitcom. Like, this is my family. Shucky darns.
I can see that.
Well, and when you were speaking of not seeing each other all the time, or you do live in the same city, so you can anytime. But if you lived across the country, anytime you were in the same city, you would make, oh my gosh, we have to get together. And so I think it's like going to see some sort of, like I live in Seattle, I can go see the Space Needle anytime. I'm never going to go because I can go anytime. But if I were visiting Seattle, I would go. And so keeping your friendship strong, even when you can be together anytime you want, and having that personal connection is very important. But 50 minutes on the same street.
I have a
Shout out 1960.
I have a question, and Eric and I were talking about this last night at dinner. We're like, it's so hard to find friends in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Okay, so I want to put it to both of you. How do you know who to hang out with at these conferences and all these things without? I mean, because everyone has an opinion on everything. So how do you know who's the good people?
I don't actually hang out with a lot of like the big name people. Not because
you're not their level yet. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
exactly. Honestly,
You're not famous
honestly because I'm not famous. I
That's not true. But yeah,
no,
I do. I know what you mean though.
But I hang out with Angela. I hang out with Shawna. I bring my people with me.
Yeah.
Like people who I've met from hygiene school. Like we met before hygiene school, but or before her hygiene school experience. But yeah, people who I've met, like who I've been a leader with in the ADHA with for years and years. Like my OG friends. That's who I bring.
It's because you know who they are. Like
Yeah.
you know, like their foundation, their heart.
Yeah, and like I trust them with like everything. They know everything about me. They could ruin me. Shawna Angela.
There's evidence out there, everyone. If you want to,
That's why they're
dig
still
deep.
friends now. Just got to make sure.
But I do want to
Keep
give
your
a shout out
enemies
to
Friends.
Shawna. So we've talked a lot about her today. If you want to follow her on Instagram, she is the Try RDH, and she just started, so we should support her.
Yeah.
The Try.
The Try RDH. She tries like products.
Oh,
Gives her
interesting.
honest reviews. Yeah.
And she gets her reviews.
So
yeah. She's not sponsored by anybody.
So she's not compensated by anyone then. 'cause
No, she's not compensated by
nobody
anybody.
wants that honesty.
Well, and I think what part of Andrew's question too, as you're gaining popularity, knowing who wants to know you because they really want to know you and your purpose and your,
Yeah.
or who wants to know you just to know you to benefit themselves.
So
Yeah.
my other pet peeve is when people go to companies and tell them that they're friends with me when they're not really friends with me. And then these companies will be like, oh, hey, so-and-so came over and they said they're friends with you. And I'm like, they're just like, I just feel like you're just using my name.
Happens so
And
often.
I don't even, we've never, like, do you have my phone number? Have we had a
Do you
conversation?
know my last name?
Yeah. Can you say my last name? Will you say my last name? So I feel like with like Stephanie, who I've known pretty recently, and Carrie, who I've known pretty recently, I feel like that they are my friends because we both we all equally share with each other. We all say each other's names in rooms. If I'm going to go do out and do something, I include both Carrie, her, and Stephanie in my presentation. Yeah, and I know that they do that for me too. So I don't know. You learn, and I've had bad experiences too. Yeah, where people have just used me. That's not all experiences. There's some really good people out there too.
Yeah. And this will sound cliche, but you click, and
Yeah.
there's just a natural vibe that you have something in common because we're not going to force friendships.
Yeah.
So you'll just find things in common and naturally click. 'Cause I know I met Megan Elliott at
I love
RDH
Megan.
Under One Roof. Yeah. And at the first dinner, we got to know each other. And then we had a second dinner during that trip. And I told Amber, I really like Megan. Like we just had,
She's a cool person.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got to know her
She's
better.
amazing.
And
I
so
love her.
yeah, so then I hung out with her more just independently, and I think you just have to, you'll just know, of course, when you build that friendship that you have something in common and or the same goals or the same personality, what your
Yeah.
likes and dislikes are. And even just connecting over social media,
Yeah.
Stephanie, I connected with her over social media first, and then even when we met in person, it was just we've been friends all along sort of deal. So, it sounds cliche, but you
But
just know.
you'll
Yeah.
know. I'll say I've been going through a really hard time this last month and a half, and I've had like Amanda just send me prayers, no other words, but just prayers. So you end up learning over time. There's some Amanda Hill. people who've like called and texted me, and you end up knowing.
Yeah.
And there is so much love. I feel, like I said, like last month has been horrible for me, and but I felt so much love. I've never felt alone, and a lot of it's been from like my dental community, just like checking up on me, or when I was on bed rest, people like sending me things like coloring books, and you know,
That's nice.
it is like you know, somebody like there's a dentist who I know from Instagram, who, no, I can't think of her name, like the pink periodontist or something. I don't know. She sent me like a Amazon, like a Venmo. She's like, buy yourself some coffee. You know, just like,
Oh,
yeah. And I was
that's
like, how did she
sweet.
find me? But just like, yeah, like there's so much love in dentistry. Yeah. There's sometimes bad things happen, but I will say that for the most part, I feel so much love. Yeah.
I like to, I mean, for me personally, because I think as a male hygienist, I have a different energy level, and I have a different like reason why I'm doing things. It's just different. I feel like between me and several people. I also get right down to the point where I say, "Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be a speaker? Like, what's in it for you? Like, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What's your aspirations? Like, if it's the people that are like, I just want to be famous.
Oh yeah, no.
I want to make a lot of money. Then I'm like, look, we are not friends. Like, we're not going to be able to hang out. But I feel like it's the people that are aligned with, hey, I just want to bring good information out to people so they can learn about it. Then I'm like, oh, okay, let's be friends then. Like, let's be, you know, I'd like to work with you. I'd like to collaborate with you. I'd like to do all of the things, but it's what's their purpose?
Yeah.
And then when they lie to me about what their purpose is, then it's like, you're never coming back from that. You're never coming back.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can get vibes from people that are just out there for the fame, for the money, and not there to generally, you know, want to get information out there. I feel like you can detect that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when someone talks about their purpose and answers that question, they're going to light up. You'll
see it in their face, for sure.
And the words are just going to come effortlessly, and they're going to have that passion and that spark.
Yeah.
Josie Sewell, she was asking me one time, because we lived in the same city for a while, and she's like, hey, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, that must have been so disheartening for her to see like no like emotion or excitement. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll do podcasting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, one time I met Amber Auger for the first time at RDH Evolution, and it was at the mixer right before everything started. And so there wasn't too many people in the room yet. Everyone was getting there. And so I approached her just to, you know, introduce myself. I'm there, you know, for that reason. I mean, you know, to get to network. And so I introduced myself, and the first thing she asked me is, what do you want to speak on? Like right away, she got to it.
Okay.
It took me, you know, I was caught off guard for sure. But I think maybe that was her strategy to see what my passion was, or if I was really there for the right reasons. But it was also nice. Like, she got to the point. I mean, in a good way, you know, like let's help each other. Let's see what we can do. So yeah, that was, I appreciated her asking me that question very bluntly. It caught me off guard, but also know, like, always be prepared, you know, with what you want to do and who you are. But that was it.
But it's also a great point, though. Like, you put yourself in a position. Like, so if you, going back to the, you know, kind of purpose of a lot of this conversation is, if someone wants to get into speaking or whatever, you have to be putting yourself in the position to have that conversation, to be asked that question.
Yeah.
If you weren't at RDH Evolution, it never would have happened.
Yeah.
Probably.
So my advice for people is 3 things. Like, 1, you need to invest in yourself. I didn't just become a speaker. I'm actually a Texas certified teacher. I can teach public school. I am a teacher. I'm an educator. My thesis short of getting a master's in education, only because my dad got sick. But otherwise, like, my majority of my education has been education, right? Like, I invested money in me knowing how to, like, write objectives, how to do abstracts. I go to as many conferences as I can, and a lot of times that costs me a lot of money.
Pocket,
It's a lot of money, but I do it to, like, so I can meet the right people, so I can learn from people. I don't just take CE courses because I need them for my requirements. I take CE courses so that I can, like, I go and I specifically go to listen to good speakers to see, like,
learn how to present.
how could I present? Learn from them.
Yeah.
If they are speakers who are speaking on my same topic, I go in and listen to them and see, like, am I saying the right things, right? Like, what am I missing? I'm always trying to learn. And that requires money. So that means like paying for a one pager and for headshots, like all those things cost money. You have to be willing, going to RDH Evolution, you have to be willing to invest in yourself. It's not free. It's not like we spend a lot of money doing these things. Then the other thing is like promoting yourself, letting people know what it is that you want to do, what your talent is, because we're not thinking about other people. We're selfish. I think about like my immediate like circle and myself. So I needed her to come and tell me like, hey, I want to speak with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have thought about it. And then networking, right? Like networking is the way that you're going to get more speaker gigs, like get to know more people. People are going to get to know you, and it's also how you'll get more sponsorship. So you have to be willing to put some work into it.
For the first several years of the podcast, everything was out of pocket. We'd go to all the conferences to do the interviews. It was all the gear that we bought. That's expensive gear. It was all coming out of the pocket. So like I really want people to understand like you have to invest time and money. Like you,
yes,
you
time.
can't.
It's so much work.
It has so much time, right?
Freaking social media.
Research.
So much work, yeah.
Hey, real quick, how can people reach out to you if they wanted to?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at the THE Latina LATINA RDH, or you can email me at amlovatos LOVATOS @gmail.com. I am not the best at my email, so if you really want a response, you probably need to DM me on Instagram.
You can find me. I'm the Pediatric RDH on Instagram, so the Pediatric RDH. I also go by Anchi or Angela. You probably heard that. Go back and forth during the podcast, and then you can email me at Anchido, ANCHIHDO @gmail.com.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.